are members of this committee and have arrived in time for this evening's meeting. Thank you. Thank you also to our team of support and officers here this evening to provide background information, any support that we need as a committee to make decisions in the course of our business. I'll move straight on to apologies and substitutions. I have a note of apologies of Councillor Brodie, Councillor Stevens, and I have note of a substitution of Councillor Ward for Councillor Brady. You're very welcome, Ian. I noticed that Councillor Brady is online as well. So they will be recorded. Any other notices? I think that's all we have. Yeah, that's it. Look, we'll move straight on to declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Quirk.
Non-pecuniary interest in the White Shipyards, in that my grandson is a CAD engineer there.
Okay, that's noted. Councillor Charman.
Yes, Chair. So everyone, I'm sure, will be aware, at least the majority here today, that there are constitutional issues bearing on this and every other committee.
Councillor Jarman, this is declaration.
You know,
Councillor Jarman, this is declarations of interest, please.
Yes,
Councillor Jarman,
my declaration.
Do you have a declaration of interest?
My declaration is that my participation here today should not be taken to endorse any decision taken on the 21st of May. Thank you.
Declaration of interest. Thank you. Okay, that's noted. The public question time. We have one public question that I am aware of, he said, and it is as follows. It is a written question from Rachel Richards to the leader, and it says this: the Q4 performance report identifies multiple strategic risks rated as very high, including the risk of the council failing to achieve its vision and of being unable to manage the ongoing impact of the cost of living crisis on service delivery. As council leader, what concrete actions are you taking to ensure these high-level risks are actively mitigated? More specifically, how are you personally assuring the public that despite these risks, the council remains on track to deliver the priorities set out in the corporate plan? And the response is as follows. Council takes a careful and structured approach to managing risks that could affect important services. Each potential risk is assessed to understand how serious it could be and how likely it is to happen. This determines their inherent score or worst case scenario. We then put mitigating action plans in place to reduce these risks, and a target score is set. The most significant risks are added to a central register, which is closely monitored by senior staff and reviewed regularly by the Audit and Governance Committee, who assess the current score and evaluate the effectiveness of mitigation efforts to ensure that risks are being properly managed. And thanks to these efforts, all but one of the highest rated risks have been brought down to a medium level, showing that our actions are making a real difference. Councillor Andrew Garrett, now Vice Chair of the committee, previously served as Chair, has worked closely with officers to ensure the register meets the council's needs and will continue to support this important work. Everyone involved in decision making, both councillors and council staff, has a role to play in managing risk. While no decision is completely without risk, taking the right steps can greatly reduce the chance of problems and help protect the services our community relies on. That is the answer to the question, will be recorded and entered onto the website in due course. Do we have any other? There are no members of the, oh, there is a member of the public here, but there are no questions. There are no questions from there are no further public questions. We will move on to members' questions, therefore. Are there any members' questions? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. As the leader will be aware, the on the application form for the mayoral authority, the proposed name is the Hampshire and Solent area. That is come from the four leaders that put that together. Can I request that you urgently write to the minister in charge of this to correct that, to say Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, to accurately reflect the counties involved within the mayoral authority proposed?
I could agree to do that, except that then removes Portsmouth and Southampton from the process.
Chair, with respect, you're elected to represent the views of the Isle of Wight people, not that of Southampton and Portsmouth. And it is the request of the of members of the Isle of Wight residents that they are accurately reflected in the counties that they live in, being Hampshire and the Isle of Wight.
It's the point I'm making. I'm not challenging. The point I'm making is that by calling it Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, the Southampton, Portsmouth are not mentioned in it.
By nature of the fact they're in Hampshire, they are
Portsmouth's not in Hampshire.
within the county of Hampshire. I can get a map out to show you if you like.
Portsmouth and Southampton are separate unitary authorities to Hampshire. There are four authorities: Southampton, Portsmouth, Hampshire, and the Isle of Wight. The point I'm making is, I'm not saying that I'm not prepared to write the minister. The point I'm making to you is that in selecting Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Portsmouth and Southampton will have a say in it, and they will point out that they are not being represented.
Well, in respect, Leader, that as I pointed out earlier, they are members of separate to you. You are a representative of the Isle of Wight, and if they want to make a fuss about their name being included, that is for their interests, not ours as the Isle of Wight.
Look, the suggested words. I'm happy to write to the Minister, Councillor Blake. Of course, I'm happy to write Minister and represent our authority. I'm forewarning you that the likely response is going to be, but let's wait and see. And thank you for your suggestion. I will take it up. I will write.
Chair.
Any other members' questions? No, there are no other members' questions. Thank you, members. Let's move on then to the decisions we have to make. If I just point out a couple of things that we're aware of, perhaps the process this evening, and that the items that we have to discuss are going to be presented by our officers. I will, once the item has been presented, I will propose that we accept the recommendation. Look for a seconder. We will then discuss the item. You will have noticed that 4 of the items have confidential papers, and that if we are to move into a private session without members of the public and the press, this is not going to be very much. There's only one member of the public here, but nonetheless, we have the formal process for that. I'll propose that. We'll have a second and we'll vote to move to that. What we will then do is discuss those in private, in block, not all together, but one after the other. And we will come back into open session with our decision after the discussions in private. So that's the process that I'm proposing for us to follow. I would say that I'm happy to, where possible, discuss matters in public where we are able, and that if we are able to avoid discussions of a confidential nature, I'm prepared to not move into a private session. However, we must be careful, and that if we were to proceed in that manner and we approach or started mentioning things that are confidential, I would put a stop to the discussion and move to private, having already agreed, the committee agreed, assuming that we do agree to move to private session. If you're all okay with that, we'll proceed. Thank you all. So I will call on with our Chief Executive Officer, I think. Are you going to present this, Wendy? As it's just your names on the report for our quarterly performance report, pages 5 to 204.
Thank you, Chair. I think the report is self-explanatory. It's a style of report that members will have seen in front of not just Cabinet for previous consideration, but corporate scrutiny as well. This is the final report that you will see in this format as we move forward with the new reporting on the new financial year. We have an improved version of the reporting format for you coming forward that will link with the requirements of the individual service committees as well. I don't intend to say anything specifically about the detail in the report. Happy members and councillors for you to ask questions. We have relevant officers in the room this evening to answer any technical questions or any technical issues that you have.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions, comments on the report? Councillor Quirk and Councillor Charman.
Several comments. First is some of the figures stated don't give any units for the things like how quickly we answer our phones, whether it's in seconds, minutes or hours. That would be helpful, I think, to know whether we're talking about someone answering the phone in 30 minutes or 30 seconds. The second is that's very good, but I think this committee should be looking at also at the financial reports that go to the officer executive, so that we actually get to see the same things and understand what's going on, because this is the Policy, Finance and Resources Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk.
The finance reports that come to corporate management team come on a monthly basis, and then they are aggregated into the quarterly report, which comes before this council as part of the quarterly return. Mr. Ward, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that.
Yeah, obviously it is our intention to bring quarterly reports to this committee. We haven't got one this quarter because this quarter is actually the close down quarter, so it's the financial year end, and we have not yet closed the financial accounts for 2024-25, but you will get a first quarter report in due course.
Thank you. Councillor with that, Councillor Quirk.
One other thought is that there's quite a few things that flag up when you read through the documents, but I don't think this is the right place to be discussing it. I think that these figures should go to the appropriate service committees so that we can discuss the why things are happening, and if there are actions that need to be taken to change the direction of travel. But I don't think this is the right forum for that. I think we should be looking at the overarching picture rather than that detail.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. That's noted, but we'll pick that up, absolutely. Councillor Charman.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few questions to pull out because I agree with Councillor Quirk. The majority of the items I've highlighted will go to the individual committees. But if I can turn first of all to page 11, I wondered if there was an explanation for the dramatic fall in the number of foot passengers and in particular vehicles using the floating bridge.
But I might be able to answer the question if you could just repeat it for me.
So page 11 shows quite a dramatic reduction in the number of passengers and in particular vehicles using the floating bridge. And I wondered if there was an explanation for such a dramatic fall.
So I don't manage it anymore. I'm not aware of any dramatic reduction for any particular reason. Obviously, at the minute, we're seeing a dramatic increase because of the roadworks. So it might just be seasonal, councillor. But I can try and find out from colleagues that do manage the bridge why that is the case.
So can you explain, Councillor John, where you're getting that from?
Page 11.
Page 11.
So page 11, they are equivalent periods, so I assume that takes out seasonal variations. So page 11, the middle box, it says the equivalent period last year was 50,800. This equivalent period is 38,000. That's quite a significant reduction. So having the numbers is one thing. The explanation that needs to go with them as to if there is a dramatic shift in any particular number, where or why that shift is occurring.
Yeah, I think that's what we normally should be doing. It may have just been that it could be something as simple as half term being different and falling into a different month, but we will investigate that further.
So can we get a written response on that? Thank you.
But wasn't there some maintenance? Wasn't there a maintenance period? Yeah,
I'm happy to wait for the response, Chair.
Chairman, we'll come back with a written response because it's about clarifying which period we're talking about in that's equivalent period. There has been a drop off in Floating Bridge numbers generally since the pandemic as a result of people changing working patterns, etc. So we will look at this particular issue and see what the pattern is, and we'll come back to you.
Through you, Chair, just to follow up on the reply, I assume that the equivalent period is the equivalent period last year. So both last year and this year are significantly after COVID. So I would assume any COVID element would have been mapped out of that.
Thank you, Chair. The Corporate Scrutiny Committee previously that viewed the last quarterly report did absolve that we would make sure that the previous time frame was literally is equivalent rather than just the previous quarter, for instance. So hopefully that has been observed so that they are all corrected now, because there was some anomalies across the paper in terms of it being the previous quarter, not the previous equivalent quarter.
that's a good point. Yeah, good point. Thank you.
So the next question I have is on page 26. So the page numbers are very small. I think we've all been concerned about the increased demand on adult social care. So it's currently running on that page. The number of people supported are at an increase of annually 325 per annum. And I wonder what measures were in place to manage that in some way in the future and mitigate it or change it, or clearly we cannot sustain an annual increase of 325 indefinitely.
Through you, Chair. Unfortunately, the Director of Adult Services can't be with us this evening, but there are a number of plans that service has in place, and I believe one of the first reports that will be received at the Adult Social Care, Public Health and Housing Needs Service Committee is based on performance and risks and challenges, and there will be more detail in that report in relation to what we see in terms of demand growing as well.
Next to page 35, we've raised at a number of health boards and health committees over the last year the question of the way that we categorise smoking, and we've repeatedly asked for this to include figures relating to all nicotine consumption, and we still don't have those. I wonder when they would be available and when the charts would be changed, please.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jarman. Leader, I'm very happy to take that question if that's okay. So with regards to the data, so what we do is the figure isn't about tobacco use, it is about smoking. That's how the national figures are looked at. What we do look at in our local services, the number of people who are quitting vaping as well. That's a brand new service that started in April. If someone wants to use our service to come off tobacco, that will be included in those figures. So what it's called a 4-week quit, but it does include quitting of all kind of tobacco products, but that's what it's called, and that's a national indicator that we use. So we wouldn't want to change that here, but it covers all products and how people are quitting.
So through your chair, if we're changing it from April onwards to include all forms of nicotine consumption, I assume that the headings will be changed in the future.
I think the challenge is that this is compared to national, so everyone's doing the same across the country, so it's really good to be able to compare ourselves with a national indicator. So yes, be assured, Councillor Jarman, if someone uses our service and quits a tobacco product, that will be included, and we can make a footnote on the graph to say what it includes.
Thank you for that, Simon. So the question is, where will the actual figures on vaping to show vaping percentages and reductions be categorised in the reports? My particular concern is amongst school children.
Councillor John, you're absolutely right. This is a concern. So it's absolutely brilliant that from the 1st of June, we have seen the banning of sales of single-use vapes. That's going to cut that use down. What we measure is the number of people quitting vaping in our service. So we can sit and talk about that. We don't know the number of people who just stop using, because that's up to personal use. That service started on the 1st of April. We measure things on a 12-week cycle. So we are now waiting for that first 12-week cycle to end, April, May, June. So we'll have another month of that. And then that would only be people who've quit on the 1st of April. So it takes a little bit of time. So I suspect by the 3rd quarter, we'll start to see that data come through.
So just one follow-up then, Simon. I don't think I got the right answer then. How are we monitoring vaping use of nicotine products amongst school-age children and the decline or increase of that? Very specific question. I'll try and be more and more specific each time.
So there's a number of surveys we have. We've got the Be Well survey that we have in our secondary schools. So a school can choose to take up that survey, and we have that data, and that's available. And that gives, remember, it's a survey, so it's not actually, it's a survey data. So we've got that data, and we can look at that over time, which will see whether someone's tried a vape, and then we'll have the quit data as well.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Andrew, Councillor Garrett,
Thank you, Leader. I just want to focus on the word average. So I heard what the Chief Executive said about improving our reports. Those of us who have been dealing with Horsebridge Hill will understand that the word average is causing a great deal of concern. And those who are being tutored by me and others will know that there are several forms of average. The mean, median, and mode. And the one I would like to focus on, because I think it's really important to understand it, what it's saying about our workforce sickness absence. So if we are reporting an average, it would be very helpful to know which average it is. Is it the arithmetic mean? Because that can be very skewed by people who are unfortunately on a very long period of sickness absence, and that does happen. I've experienced it myself in my working life, when you are off sick for 4 months and more. So I think it would be helpful in those sorts of reports to also present the median and the mode in this, because the vast majority of our staff are present every single working day without any sickness, or 1 or 2 sickness days. And I think that's really important to understand actually the great amount of health there is amongst our workforce, but also then really bring out so that we can monitor where particularly it is being skewed by those who unfortunately are suffering a prolonged period of ill health, and that sadly these days is particularly through mental health as well. So I'll leave that as a kind of hopefully something the Chief Executive can pick up, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Leader. I suppose initially, actually, we're learning a new system, just a bit of guidance. There were a couple of comments earlier about this committee having a broad overview function. A couple of things struck me about particular service areas. I'm wondering if they should be left to those committees, although I know we have a very well populated part of the room over there with pretty much every service area represented. So I mean, my question is related to fly tipping and fostering, not at the same time. But I just wondered if it'd be better to reserve those for the specific committees.
Chair, through you, Councillor Bacon, if you have a specific question, we could take the specific question and get a written answer for this committee. But also, in taking the question, we can make sure that the performance reports that go to committee pick up on issues that are of general interest to this committee as well as the service committees.
Thank you, Wendy. I guess I would just comment, and I see no reason why separate committees can see the same information either.
No.
That makes no, as a broad overview of finance, we need to see some of, or all of these. But I agree that relative respective committees could also see it. I'll come to you after, Councillor Quirk.
Well, perhaps I could just flag up the 2 points. I won't seek answers just now. I was looking through the children's services section, and it's probably my default. I couldn't see any information on how we're doing with recruitment of foster carers, which I know there's been a drive over. And if it's reported in somewhere, it'd be useful to have that flagged up. And the second question was merely in relation to the fly tipping information on pages 132 and 133. I just wondered if we could clarify the difference between incidents and actions, which the two tables refer to, but and also comment that it looks as if we're dealing with fly tipping or fly tipping is reducing. But again, it is some commentary on that would be welcome, if possible, either here or, as I say, at another committee.
We can either do written or Ashley, are you? I'll come to you after Colin, please.
Councillor, thank you for the question about fostering. This data set, you're correct, doesn't have detailed information about fostering, but there is an awful lot of work going on at the moment to consider how we are recruiting foster carers. And there is an item at the first Children's Services Education Skills Committee relating to what we refer to sometimes as our Children's Social Care Sufficiency Strategy, Homes for Children. And within that, there will be more information on what we're doing about growing the number of foster carers that we have on the island. There are national challenges around the number of foster carers available for children across the whole country. The average age of foster carers is relatively high, and some of those are ceasing to be foster carers, having done great work for many years. And so there is a need nationally to reach out to younger foster carers and bring them on stream, as it were, to provide homes for our children. The other thing that's happening again around the country, and we're also seeing it on the island, is a significant increase in not just the numbers of children with significant needs, but also the complexity of those needs. And what that's meaning is that there are a large number of children whose needs cannot be met within what we would refer to as mainstream foster carers. And so what that means is they either go to live with foster carers who have additional training so that they can provide homes for children with a higher level of complexity of need, or those children need to go into residential provision. And we also need to do work to develop the number of homes we have for children around residential provision as well. So I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we're doing about it. The short answer is that there isn't data around that in that report, but we can certainly look to include that in the future if that's something that this committee or others would like to have.
Thank you, Ashley. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah. Do you want to do the waste?
If it's all right, Chair, so I didn't manage the floating bridge, but I've still got my old paper, so I can answer Councillor Jarman's question if you want me to.
Let's come back to that. Thank you.
Quite
Colin,
straight.
do you want to speak? Well, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, just
Waste.
difference between actions and interventions.
The two tables, pages 132, 133, are headed incidents and actions.
Yes, well, incidents are recorded incidents of fly tipping that we've been notified of, and actions will be the actions we take, which either is investigation or other actions as a result of being able to identify the fly tipper.
And I just noticed that quarter 4 incidents, the column's blank. Is that good news or an absence of news?
That's a delay, I think, in information gathering, which we need to address.
Thank you.
Come to Ian, if I may. Alex, yeah, but please just address that question from Councillor Jarman. I think let's try and cover that off.
Yeah, okay. Looking at the sheets for the two of the periods in that quarter, there was significant planned maintenance. So the floating bridge was out of action. I think in March it was 192 hours. In April it was 48 hours for planned maintenance. In the previous year it was considerably less than that. So I would imagine that's probably why the figures are different between the 2 years. However, you are correct. We should be putting that kind of information on the paper, and we'll do in the future.
There was also unplanned maintenance, electronic breakdown for an extended period. Councillor, thank you for that, Alex. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to this fly tipping figure. Do we collect Island Roads' figures for fly tipping? They seem to be doing it every day, all day, yet we have no reflection.
My understanding it is because it's part of the fly capture data that DEFRA require, and it's all fly tipping on the island. So I would imagine that Island Road, I'll check, but I imagine that Island Roads is part of that figure as well.
I think it's a KPI, Colin, I think. Any further members' questions? Yeah, Councillor Quirk, sorry.
Just coming back on what Jonathan said about the asking questions. I wasn't inferring that we shouldn't ask questions about budgets here. I think if there's something that needs to be answered, if there's something that really glares at you, we should always have the right to do that. It's just that there's a lot of things where you think something must be going on there, and this isn't really the place to look at those and delve into them. This is really, we should be looking at the headlines, not at the details. So that was what I was getting at. Not to say we can't do it. I don't want to set a precedent that's the message that's taken.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. That's noted. Councillor Jarman.
Just 3 more points. If I go to page 57, this is a question for Mr. Whittaker, I suspect. We have a significant increase continuing in the number of educational healthcare plans. I know we've discussed this in the past at some length. It's always disappointing to see the number continuing to increase quite rapidly. And I suppose the question really is, what is there that is in place that will deal with this issue? Because clearly the burden that this would, burden is the wrong word, the challenge that this would represent to the council and to education on the island becomes increasingly significant.
Very happy to answer questions about that, Councillor. I'll try and keep reasonably brief because we could talk about this for an awful long time. So the context of this nationally, I think, as you know, but helpful for others to know as well probably, is that nationally, the number of education and healthcare plans is going up about 10% a year. And we're actually just waiting for the latest data to come out from the DfE any moment, because all local authorities put their data in on January centres, middle of January every year, and the DfE publishes it around about now every year. It's one of the most exciting days of the year, actually, to find out what's happened with the national picture. So this growth in the total number of education and healthcare plans on the island is seen across the whole country as well. And one of the other important things to remember is that most children with special educational needs have their needs met without an education and healthcare plan. So on the island now we have about 1,822, but we also have about 3,000 children who have a recognised special education need or disability for which they do not have an education and healthcare plan. The key to resolving what is a really big national challenge, and you're right to point out that because when a child has an education and healthcare plan, the funding of that support largely, not completely, but largely shifts from being from a school's budget into the council's high needs block budget from the dedicated schools grant. The key to, that overspend, which is currently ring-fenced from the council's wider balance sheet by what's called the statutory override, which was put in place by central government some years ago and is currently due to run out in March 2026, and people around the country are waiting to find out what government's going to do about that. Is the key to the long-term solution here is having a system where the needs of children and young people who have additional needs can be met without an education and healthcare plan. So it's all about early identification, early intervention, and the prevention of the escalation of those needs, so that children and young people have their needs met without that statutory intervention of an education and healthcare plan. So a lot of what that's about is looking at what we call ordinarily available provision in school and the quality of provision under what's called SEN support, sometimes referred to as SENK, in schools. So this is around mainstream schools delivering their duties under the SEND Code of Practice, using their notional SEN budgets effectively to make sure that their staff and their processes within schools are sufficient to do that, so that the needs do not escalate, and there's therefore not a need for an education and healthcare plan to be put in place if their needs to be met. So that is very much aligned to the education strategy that we have on the island. There's 5 pillars in the education strategy, one of which is all around transforming special education needs and disabilities on the island. And absolutely fundamental to that is working with our new school improvement team to work with schools to make sure that staff in mainstream schools are competent and confident in identifying need early and meeting need early, so those needs don't escalate. One last fact I'll share with you is that on the island, if you consider the 0 to 25 population on the island, and we've got 1,822 education and healthcare plans, that's about 5.6% of the entire 0 to 25 population. The national average is about 3.4%. And many of you will have heard me said before that there is a correlation between the quality of provision in mainstream schools and the number of education and healthcare plans that a local area has. And that our belief is that if we can work with our school system to improve the quality of education in mainstream schools, one of the products of that will be that less children will need an education and healthcare plan for their needs to be met. There will always be some children who have to have an education and healthcare plan, but more children will be able to have their needs met without an education and healthcare plan through SEN support within mainstream schools.
Thank you, Ashley. Any further questions?
Thank you, Chair. So continuing with that, just to follow back, does that mean that the mechanisms for deploying that, and particularly the earlier intervention and the localised support to avoid the need for these plans, would be embraced within the revision to the school-based planning documentation?
So partly. So one of the key elements of the need to realign the number of primary school places we have with the numbers of children we now have will be about making the financial situation within mainstream schools sustainable and more viable. So the latest data we have around the financial performance within financial year 24-25 for maintained primary schools on the island is that the sector spent just under £1 million more than it received in income. So what we aim to do over the coming months, years, with regard to school-based planning is return that school system to one which is financially sustainable, where school leaders have access to the resources they need to invest in early identification, early intervention, staff training, and using their notional SEN budgets to bring in the expertise they need as required to meet the needs of children earlier. So it is very connected. As with lots of things on the island, things are connected, and you do one thing in one area and it has an impact somewhere else. But for us, the school-based planning situation is all about improving outcomes for children, all children. And the way we need to do that is to deliver a financially viable school system and allow school leaders to have access to resources they need to improve outcomes for children. So it is very linked to the need for the ongoing discussions around school-based planning.
Thank you, Ashley.
One more, Chair, which is probably aligned with something that Andrew might have a concern about as well. On page, get the right page, 91, we have the definition here of a strong pass in English and maths with an asterisk after it, which is grade 5 and above. And I wondered, is that how currently we define a strong pass, grade 5? Andrew's probably familiar with the passing levels that we have these days. My days they were A, Bs and Cs. A would be a strong pass. Here we have grade 5 and above, and I'm lacking in my knowledge of the current system to define what grade 5 and above means.
So the way, so I'm in the different page number. But yeah, so essentially, so GCSEs are now graded 1 to 9. So it's no longer the old way of doing it with A stars, A's, etc. So generally speaking, a pass would be 4 or higher, and a 5 would be a good pass or higher. So a 5 or higher would be a good pass. A 4 would be a pass. I'm just trying to find the.
So an 8 or a 9 would not be a strong pass.
Yeah, so the 9 is the highest you can get.
Just seems to be a very broad definition of the word strong.
Thanks for the explanation. Any further questions? Therefore, the recommendation, I'll read it, so that the committee approves the performance report for the quarter ended 31st of March 2025 and the priority report details set out in the appendices 1 to 8. And I will propose that we approve that recommendation. Look for a seconder. Thank you. That's Councillor Bacon. So that has been proposed and seconded. No further questions. Those in favour of accepting this report, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. And we will move on to the land and property asset disposal policies, page 205 to 232 in our papers. I believe this is Graham. Is you proposing this? Presenting this?
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Yes, in January, full council requested that officers develop a land and property asset disposal policy, a new one, with a view to prioritising housing development on the island. The recommended policy, I trust you've all had a chance to read it, including the process map at the end, which is the easier to read document that details how the policy works. It details how the council will manage the disposal of its land after it's become surplus to requirements for council purposes, and this policy will form part of a policy framework of the council if it's adopted. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a paper before us which goes through some analysis on this. The principal thing that I would say, however, is that the determination and the motion that was before full council in January was very clear. It reserved the matter specifically to be brought back to full council for review and determination, and specifically related to social rent housing and a number of other provisions. And the paper that's been brought forward to us today, disappointingly, does not reflect the decision of full council. So with that in mind, my suggestion here, a strong suggestion, is that given that this does not recognise the resolution of full council in January, that we refer it back to officers for them to correct accordingly.
That proposal. Like some clarity on the decision making on this, please. Is the recommendation coming from full council and the decision taken by this committee? And is the proposal therefore to send it back to full council to discuss further, to then represent it to this committee?
No. Sorry, Chair, that wasn't my proposal at all.
Chairman, if it assists, I think it's for this committee to make a recommendation to full council. Because whilst I wasn't here, as I understand it, the proposal is this will ultimately form part of the policy and budget framework. So it's ultimately going to be a full council decision to adopt. However, it's for this committee to make a recommendation to full council. And if they're not happy with the report as presented, it needs to be referred back to officers for further work.
And not back to this committee. That's the point I'm trying to make.
sorry, Chair, I misunderstood that. No, it would come back to this committee to then make a further recommendation if they are then satisfied to full council for approval.
You okay with that? So we're going to propose a seconder. Let's just, those in favour of that procedure, please show. That's for those against.
So, Chair, I'm not sure what we're actually, what are the problems that,
The proposal,
why are we being asked to refer it back again? I mean, I have found a document on my desk, which I wonder if not being explained to me, it's not signed by anyone. I don't know where it comes from. Is that something to do with this?
Jarman will clarify his proposal.
Yes, Chair. I'll reiterate it I'll try and be as succinct as I can. The paper that was brought before this committee does not reflect the motion and decision that was taken by full council. So what I'm seeking is that the paper is referred back to officers. And if that needs to be, as Mr. Thorne has just outlined, a rejection of the paper by this committee and submission of it to full council, for full council to send it back to officers, I would find that's rather strange. So I'm believing that this committee can simply refer it back to I'm getting nods here, thank you, can simply refer it back to officers for them to redraft it according to the motion that was agreed at full council in January. And then to bring it back to this committee, for this committee, if it then approves it, to refer it back to full council. And I'm sure Mr. Thorne will correct me if I've got any of those words wrong. He's nodding again. Good.
Yes, okay. I'll come to you after, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we're going to be finding our way in this new committee system, and I think in this instance, it is finding a way on making sure that draft strategies can get out to the members of the council in time for them to provide their considered opinion. There is no way I can digest the document that's presented before me. What I do note, unless it is wrong, that this committee meets again before the next full council, or have I missed a date of full council? I think that it will be, so the 5th of July, this committee will meet again. Full council meets on the 16th of July. I think that provides time for us to refer back positively to, and I certainly would thank the officers for drawing this up. It was a resolution of full council, which I did support. That they consider the extent of comments here from the unsigned paper, bring it back to us in early July, and then we can forward it on without any loss of the tempo required to have an adoption by the full council. I think that actually does feel like a reasonable step, but also that we note that actually there may be situations, particularly in these early stages of being in the new system, that if we could get draft strategies out for long before a committee, so that those members who, and I'm sometimes one of them, Councillor Jarman is always one of those who plays close scrutiny to what is being said, can get those comments in and taken on board by officers before they come before committees.
Thank you, Councillor Carrott. Councillor Quirk, Councillor Bacon.
I totally agree with that, it's important that the will of full council is respected, and that seems to have somehow not quite made it into the paper as it stands. There are a couple of things that I would like to see change slightly. The paper says that what comes to us will go to town and parish councils before or at that time. I think if we're going to build up a list of properties for disposal, the time to actually get in touch with town and parish councils and local members is when you're drawing up that list, and actually get the local knowledge and input as to if there are particular issues about the site. I mean, I doubt the property services are as aware as I am about sort of the where some of the springs are in Shanklin, but there are certain places you could build, and Spa site is one of them, where actually in certain bits of that there is an underground spring that might actually compromise what you're actually proposing. So I think that should be at the time that we're drawing up the property list of assets for disposal. That would be a really good time to talk with the local members and with the town and parish councils. So what comes into this committee actually has their suggestions. We may not agree with their suggestions, but at least they've been taken into account at an early stage in the process. And that seems a not unreasonable way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. I thank Councillor Garrett because that's pragmatic. It shows we're not holding things up. I'm still had no explanation as to what the stated difference is between what we're dealing with and full council. And as I say, it seems to be people are referring to this piece of paper. Has this been circulated before? I've not had sight of it. I don't know why we should be expected to make decisions on the basis of unsigned pieces of paper that are dropped on our desk. It doesn't seem very satisfactory, but I assume it's something to do with this, so I'll read it in due course. But I accept the pragmatism of Councillor Garrett. We've got another meeting before we're at risk of holding anything up, so that would seem to be acceptable in the rather unsatisfactory circumstances.
Councillor John.
Yes, Chair, could I suggest that it was unfortunate in the drafting of this paper that neither of the principal architects of the motion in January, which was Councillor Quirk here, and Councillor Spink, who sat behind me, I believe were consulted in its drafting. So in the interim period between now and it coming back to this committee, as the officers are redrafting the paper, could I suggest that they strongly engage with those two members who were the architects of the motion back in January to make sure that when it comes back to this committee, it can be an accurate reflection of the motion and intent at that time. Thank you.
Okay. We've had a proposal. Let's second that again. That's slightly different. Well, you're proposing, seconded by Councillor Blake. Those in favour of that process? Noted. Those against? Those abstaining? Councillor Bacon's abstained. Thank you. We will move to the items of disposal. Item 5C, disposal of Columbine building, sale of former Sandon Middle School, the sale of Elmdon Highfield Road, Shanklin, and the sale of Thompson House, each of which has confidential paper. So as I said at the beginning, I'm going to propose that when we need to, and that may not be long, since there appears to be no members of the press or public here, but when we do move to a closed session, that we have properly processed that. So I'm going to propose this committee enters into, when required, a private session, and I'll propose that for a seconder. Thank you. That's Councillor Bacon. So I'm asking the committee to support moving to closed session. Please show.
I'm sorry, Chair, isn't there a more formal wording than that?
I don't have a formal wording, but is there a formal wording you'd like?
It usually is. It's on the agenda.
Consider that as per paragraph.
Yeah, okay, so I'll read this, thank you.
Yeah, so
That's okay, no, that's fine.
pedantic on these matters.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Andrew. Thank you. So I'll read that as clarity. So as part of paragraph 3 and part 1 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. This is considered commercially confidential as it includes the valuation provided by the Isle of Wight Council's appointed valuer and therefore links directly with the proposed commercial sale negotiations and with the business or financial affairs of the prospective purchaser. Until contracts are exchanged, the release of any such information relating to the negotiations is likely to prejudice both the council and the purchaser. To clarify, this is information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and for that reason, access is restricted to the committee. That is the proposal. So let's ask for a seconder again. Councillor Bacon, thank you. So that's the proposal and it's been seconded. Those in favour of when required moving to closed session, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. So we will move on with the disposal of the Columbine, and I'll ask Gino, are you Alex, to present this paper, please? Can I just say, before you do, that when we move on to this, there is confidential information. I am prepared to try and discuss this in public if you can guarantee and with refrain from mentioning anything that relates to confidential information. Thank you. Councillor Chalmers.
Chair, I think.
Councillor Chalmers.
Right. Thank you for your observation that there are no members of the press or public here. I'm not sure if that's the case online. And so I think when we come to online, we'll need to take that down.
I'm aware of that. Alex.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to present the report. The author of the report is largely Gino, sitting next to me, and Gino is the project manager. It is quite a detailed report, so hopefully Gino will be able to answer some of the detailed questions that you might have around it. If I just give you a very quick overview and then read out the officer recommendations on this paper, and then we can obviously have a discussion. And as said, we may need to do some of that in a closed session. This is looking at the disposal of a commercial building, the Columbine building. And for those of people that aren't aware, that's the building that was built in 1933 and is the building with a huge Union Jack on the front of it in East Cowes. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. Just to give you a little bit of the background behind it, the council purchased the Columbine building along with the Venture Keys estate back in 2020, and the Columbine building is part of that estate. And this doesn't focus on all of that estate. This paper just focuses on the Columbine building itself. It was purchased by the council as a regeneration opportunity and to ensure that we retained jobs and businesses in East Cowes, and also to promote those businesses and to promote employment in those areas. The paper talks at length about that and the current position in East Cowes. What that then facilitated is the council being able to put in for a levelling up fund grant, levelling up fund 1, I think it was at the time, and allowed us to draw down £5.8 million to rejuvenate that area, some of which was used to renovate and upgrade the Columbine building. That work is almost complete. And there's further work to be done on other aspects of that estate, but the work on the Columbine building is almost complete. What then happened was in February 2024, the most significant current tenant in the building, which is White Shipyards, actually put an expression of interest in to purchase that building from the Isle of Wight Council, so they could obviously extend their aims of becoming a major employer on the Isle of Wight and being able to invest in that building. As a result of that, the paper looks at all of the different options associated with the disposal of that building to White Shipyards. And each of those options you'll see has got some risks and some evaluations by the side of it. I'm not going to read all of those out because it's obviously quite a lengthy process. But what I will do is just to read out the current officer recommendations to you, and then we can open up and take some questions and debate the subject matter. So the officer recommendation is option 4, and that's to agree a long leasehold disposal to White Shipyards for a capital receipt at above the market value, and that is set out in the confidential appendices. It needs to be above the market value to meet the subsidiary control legislation, and the appendices show that it does. It's also to assign a small portion of land in front of the Columbine building on the apron side, which is currently a Crown Estate lease, to White Shipyards from the council. That was option 6. And then option 7 was to delegate any further decisions relating to the Columbine disposal. So that would be the, if you agreed to option 4, that would be the detail of option 4, to the Director of Community Services to my right, in consultation with the Section 151 officer. If you agree that that is the correct way forward, those delegated decisions won't be done in isolation to the points that are made later in the report about what would go into that lease if we were to dispose of it. And that makes sure that we safeguard that building for marine related purposes, and that we may even maintain the Union Jack on the front of the building. So there are some significant safeguards if you agree to dispose of that building, that it would continue as an employment site, which is the critical regeneration aspect of this site, and the sole reason that obviously we got the grant in Levelling Up Fund 1. So quite happy for myself and Gina to take any further questions, and Colin as well, who's been involved with this project, and to see how you feel about the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to try and do this in open session. I've just asked you once again to be mindful of the sums of money quoted in the confidential appendix. If we can avoid that, we can probably get through this specific item in public. Councillor Jarman.
I wonder if you could give a synopsis of the discussions on this proposed disposal with the local members and the local council.
I can do, and Gina might want to add to that. We have had significant discussions with the local council, East Coast Town Council. They are entirely supportive of this option, and it actually furthers their aims to deliver the public realm, which is the next aspect of this project, and it would help to facilitate that. We have also spoken to the MP for the area, and he's supportive of the disposal in this way. The local members and at the same time as obviously doing the East Coast Town Council. Yeah.
Yes, Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I'm fully supportive of option 4. However, I don't think it's the place of this committee to be seeing this particular item. My understanding of how a committee system ought to work is this ought to have gone through economy and the regen, etc. Committee first to flesh out some of the details. And I thank Mr. Waldridge for his help answering questions for me earlier this week. There are still some questions around what the covenants may be placed on the building, which I think are quite key to preserving the public interest. So I'd suggest that moving forward, we actually understand how the committee system is supposed to work, and it comes through the service committees first, for then the policy, finance and resources committee to then ascertain whether there is finance and resources available or the policy should be set that way, to then discuss back through and then eventually refer to full council for approval. That goes for the other 3 sites that we're due to discuss tonight, I believe. So there needs to be a proper way that this is not seen as a mini cabinet as previous, and there is a shift of mentality towards what the committee system is meant to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Anyone want to comment? There's a number of issues. I'll come to you, Councillor Bacon. Shall we deal with Colin first? And could you have a comment on the Constitution? It seems like there was comments there that are cutting across what the Constitution says. But Colin.
The only comment I'd make, Councillor Blake, is that this is a historical process that we've gone through, and we went through the process with the cabinet system, and it's just this is carried over into this system. So under normal circumstances, what you're suggesting with the monitoring officer supporting would be the way that we would follow that process. But in this circumstances, because of we've gone through a process through the old system, and we've gone through a decision-making process with member consultation, and this is a carryover. It's not something that we would do in the future.
Appreciate. Oh, sorry, Chair. If you
it's okay. I was thinking, Colin, if you want to speak, Councillor Bacon.
Sorry,
Councillor Bacon.
That is unfortunate in this situation, but however, we have gone from one set of governance to another, So there is a hard stop at the end of that. We can't have a grey area of, oh, we're just sort of carrying on some stuff from the previous governance system. There needs to be a hard stop. Unfortunately, that wasn't passed within the last governance system. It is now in the current governance system. So I don't quite take your point.
I think let's Councillor Bacon, let's try and help you with what the Constitution says also. I'll come to you after, Councillor Quirk. Councillor Bacon.
Well, what I was thinking was just stated by Mr. Rowlands. And I'd say we can't have a hard stop. We can't just stop everything and start it again. There has to be a crossover period. And that's what I understand this to be illustrative of. Although I hear Councillor Garrett muttering, and I think he's being able to look up the Constitution can probably help us more than, yeah. So, but we can't have a hard stop and just stop everything and start it all again from scratch. That would be ridiculous.
That's well noted, Councillor Bacon. I'm going to ask the Deputy Monitoring Officer to read the Constitution on this so that we're clear. We're sorry that we're going to have a bit of this as we try and find out our way through this system. It's not, there's some tests and we may make mistakes on our way, but let's do our best to get it as correct as we can. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, at present, the terms of reference of this committee sets out that it will be responsible for the authority's corporate assets and resources, particularly the financial, land and property and information assets and resources. However, the way that the new constitution is drafted does recognise there may be crossovers where matters might be influenced by or should go to a number of committees, which, as we learn, I'd assume would be where there is more of a policy base that sits better in another committee to then come to this committee ultimately. We also have, depending on what the policy says when it's brought back to this committee, the implication to the asset disposal policy, because that will also add an extra layer of decision making there, because the proposal is that will now say that property disposals will be made by full council on recommendation from this committee.
Yeah. That's a quirk.
To start with, I do support this approval, and however it's approved. When the motion about bringing decisions about property disposals to full council was drafted, I had extensive discussions with 2 monitoring officers, but not with Justin, I'm afraid, but about the wording of it, about when it could become applicable, and the whether this would apply from when the new system started. And I was assured that we couldn't actually put a restriction on the cabinet because that was what was there already. So they couldn't start, but it would apply to the committee system from the day that the committee system started. So I think at present, the motion of the full council that decisions on property disposal should go back to full council actually stands. It's for full council to change that, not for this committee, in my opinion.
Okay. This is becoming a discussion about constitution. I think what I'm going to do is I want to push forward with this one way or another, and that we take away these discussions from here about the other committee vis-a-vis each committee and full council, because unless we have some absolute clarity here tonight, I think this is going to take some further discussions around the constitution. Councillor Jarman.
Can I just ask, Councillor Garrett, were you looking at 329? Yeah.
Okay, let's proceed in that manner. And have these discussions at another time, in another place, in another way about the constitution and what items come here and whether it goes to full council and so on. So I think the point's well made, Councillor Blake, but let's move forward tonight with this at least. Are there any questions on the issue? Any further questions on the matter to hand? That's the disposal of the Columbine. There are none. Alex read the recommendation. Are you happy with that? You don't require me to reread that. So that's not a requirement.
Put the recommendation.
Oh, okay. I'll read the recommendation then. So the recommendation is option 4 to agree a long leasehold disposal, 150 years lease at Peppercorn Rent for 2 WSY for a capital receipt or above the value set out in Appendix 1. Option 6 is to assign the Crown Estate lease WSY, or option 7 is to delegate any further decisions relating to the Columbine disposal and prom building to the Director of Community Service in consultation with the Section 151 officer. I seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Blake. For the proposal, that's the recommendation, and the seconder.
For the record, Bacon seconded.
Sorry. Been said, Councillor.
Need to shave more often.
Councillor Bacon, for the record, has seconded it. Apologies, councillors. Those in favour, therefore, please show. So that's 3. Those against? That's 4 against. No abstentions. We will move on. Well, I thought I made it clear, Councillor Quirk, that we would. I thought I made it. Please listen through the chair. I thought I made it clear that we were moving ahead with the decision and that those discussions will be had at another time. So I hope you voted correctly.
Chair, sorry, Chair. Councillor Quirk's point is very relevant. You may have suggested that as a member, but that's not something. This is the whole thing around this new committee system. As leader and chair, you can't make decisions like that without approval of the whole committee. We are one, and we are, so you can't go ahead and do that and make that assertion. We have voted against this, not because that we think that this is a bad decision, and that needs to be noted. We're voting against this because we are not voting for this, rather, because we don't have the authority to make this decision. The fact that you think that you can just carry on and do that is another issue.
So I'll defer to the Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Chair, thank you. And I may draw in my colleague, Mr. Fernandez, who I believe may have had a conversation with Councillor Quirk, if I remember what Councillor Quirk said right. But the resolution of full council, as amended, says that, and it just simply starts, takes responsibility for adopting and approving the Isle of Wight Council Land Asset Disposal Strategy, which, when approved, will become a policy framework document. All disposals of the Isle of Wight Council land assets will comply with the adopted asset disposal policy when it's adopted. The policy will require that any land assets proposed for disposal are assessed for commercial viability of relocatable housing and development by or on behalf of this full council for social rent housing, either exclusively or in part, with said assessments being presented to full council for review and determination. My reading of that is that yes, full council requires a policy to be made that requires all disposals to go to full council, but until such time as that policy is approved, there is not a requirement to take all disposals to full council. Is my reading of that.
Can we move on? You've made a decision, and we will stand by that decision. Was it, yeah, no, there was, but yeah, but there was a decision. The decision was to reject the recommendation. Yeah.
Chairman, as an officer, I just have concerns about that decision, given the clarity that was just provided and the implications of that decision on this commercial deal, which is important to the council.
Councillor Jarman, and I'm going to move on from this item. Councillor Blake, there's been a recommendation, proposer, seconder, and we voted on it. We've decided not to take the recommendation. That's decision of this committee. So,
Chairman, I don't want to get into semantics, but you haven't made a decision. You just haven't agreed recommendations.
no, we've made a decision to make a decision. Well, we have.
But no, I suppose the difference is you could ask for another recommendation or another motion to be put forward at this point, if that was the committee's wish.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming the same recommendation can't be put forward again. Could I therefore put forward a slightly different recommendation, which would use all the wording contained in option 4, 6 and 7, but change it to a 149-year lease, therefore changing its nature, but making a different recommendation? And seek a seconder.
That's 1 second. Right, let's, I'm going to come to the councillors and I'll come to the officers, please. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and assist here, and in the general case. We brought a motion to full council which was passed very clearly in January for an asset disposal policy. We expected that policy to be brought forward rather quickly. It wasn't. It's been waiting 5 months. We are still in absence of an asset disposal policy. And today we've sent it back because the one we're presented with does not comply with the resolution of full council. It is quite possible that if we try and proceed without that policy, it could be delayed almost indefinitely, and we would be in the same situation that we are now. I'm going to propose, and look for a seconder, that we simply halt asset disposals until that asset policy is brought back to us. We trust in July, 4 weeks' time. That's not an unreasonable delay, 4 weeks. And provided that policy, with the assistance of Councillor Quirk and Councillor Spink, is acceptable to this committee and reflects the will of full council in January, we should have no problem with proceeding both with that policy and with the asset disposals before us today. So that's the proposal.
I am going to move us into private. I believe that you need more information that's confidential when you are considering making decisions that are opposite to this recommendation. Therefore, we will move into a private session and we will take a 5-minute break whilst you do that.